Welcome to FinFactor. I'm your host, Blaine Bertsch, co-founder and CEO at Drudgery Cash Flow Forecasting Software, where we help the office of the CFO leave spreadsheets behind and model everything from cash flow through to complex scenarios with clarity and control. And joining me today is David Kilzer of Strategic Transformation Advisors. After decades leading automation and systems integration projects across diverse sectors, from global apparel operations to food and medical device distribution, David's seen firsthand how technology can transform both productivity and the finance function. And today we'll discuss how CFOs must understand the rapid evolution of automation and its impact on successful operations. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Blaine. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So I know like top of mind to almost everyone today, but certainly to CFOs. And I will mention that we talk with CFOs every day, and there is a lot of, I guess, apprehension and a lot of businesses are moving into the automation and AI area quite slowly and quite carefully, but it's coming and it's coming fast. So I want to dive into that. What is some of your perspective on AI and where we are today, and how rapidly that finance function is going to transform?
AI itself is exploding. It's expanding every day in terms of its capabilities and rapidly growing in terms of its adoption. It's a little bit uneven, and I think the unevenness is going to be telling. Those companies that lag this critical technology will pay the price in competitiveness. Those that leap in too quickly will set themselves on a course that doesn't yield the results that they anticipated, and also could end up jeopardizing current operations. So it is a topic that is well worth spending time to understand and to plan and to put together the steps and the teams that will help a company transit this great transition that we're going through.
Well, and I know, like, you and I both been around through a few of these different evolutions, right? Like I was just getting into a business right around the time the internet was literally just a few years old and was just kicking off. Um, of course, like some technology like that, we saw how much it changed the entire planet. Um, and some of it in very expected ways, although some of it took longer than maybe we thought. And in other ways, it was completely surprising. There were areas where, I remember early internet days, pre-internet days, the dot bomb, where there was talk about what it could do, what it couldn't do, how it would transform the world, and some of it was completely wrong, but a lot of it was right. Um, and I think with AI, we're in the same place. You said exactly. If you're late, you're in trouble. If you're too early, you got to be really careful. So how what is the state like right now, and how do businesses ease their way in so that they're lowering their risk, but they're also moving in the right direction at a pace that makes sense?
I think it has to be addressed carefully, which means that you would set up almost experimental zones and put firewalls around them, bound them very closely, so any mistakes that will inevitably be made when you implement a technology as new and as earth shattering as this is. Uh, that's going to happen. So you have to uh, put the firewalls in place, put those bunkers in place that to contain the problems that you'll come across, and give you a chance, the breathing room, the headroom that it will take to address and resolve those issues.
So I know one of the biggest challenges with AI adoption right now is like it's unbelievable with what it can do in some areas. It is just so fantastic, and but it also can just hallucinate, and it can, and I've seen it firsthand because of course we use a lot of AI. I've seen it firsthand where it can be so confident in being wrong. And so, that's the challenge where um, I guess what's happening in the industry to help remedy that so that the trust level will go up and there are some um, some double checking and standards to make sure that it's not telling you something really convincingly that is completely wrong.
Yeah, it can hallucinate and look you square in the eye and look quite convincing at the same time.
Mhm,
The good news there is the instances of that are dramatically reducing,
mhm.
but they're still going to be there. And as we push this technology further, it'll occur on the fringes. As we become more reliant on it, we're also going to be more susceptible to those pitfalls. So,
Mhm.
we have to put in place the plans that will uh, again sandbox where we start, understand where we do, put in place as part of that initial investments those review points that will catch and resolve any issues like can be created by work slop or hallucinations. Um, and it's going to take some perceptive people there because, as you pointed out, right, quite rightly, it is extremely convincing in the presentations of its errors. Uh,
Mhm.
so I mean that is something that has to be recognized and plans put in place as part of the implementation of any initiatives that you would take on.
And so, where do you, especially in the finance function sort of area, where do you see the technology working really well today? Where do you also see areas where it needs some room to grow, and areas that down the road people will still have to, will be the driver, but where they can use technology may not necessarily replace everybody, right?
It'll never replace everybody. The humans are still going to be in the loop just for the same reasons that we talked about already. And there's a essential element that humans bring that the machine will not. The inventiveness of the human in those situations, something that the machines, at least in my foreseeable future, they're not going to provide that.
Mhm.
There's still that thing that creativity that's essentially human at this point. Uh,
Yeah.
Getting there, you have to be very conscious of um, the rate of change that is taking place right now. One of the things that I see as far as the CFO's role uh, is to be aware of that. I mean, one of the things that have been traditional in terms of CFO, one of the critical things that they do is capital allocations within a firm. And I don't know if there's any more critical function than that.
Mhm.
They make sure that the available capital is deployed to the maximum effect. Uh, Now, that has been a critical part of any automation projects that I've ever done. You don't do they are in the end fun, but you don't do them because they're fun. You do them because they're going to provide a return to the business
Yeah.
in commensurate return for the size of the investment that's going in. So we've developed a lot of traditional measures over the years: IRRs, internal rate of returns, net present value, cash payback, and other measures that are used by the financial function to assure that they are correctly allocating scarce capital.
Mhm.
Uh, I think that has to be somewhat modified when we look at the rate of change and the critical nature of the change that is taking place with AI and humanoid robotics, particularly
Mhm.
uh, that it is going to provide a huge competitive advantage when it arrives. That's
Yeah.
been forecast at having a liquidated cost per hour of $8 an hour. There's not too many human workforces, none in the U.S., that will come anywhere near that. And so, if you depend on the human workforce and you're competing as a firm with other firms that have that type of a labor burden cost, so you're going to be in a tremendous disadvantage.
Mhm.
So you have to be able to be in a place to rapidly adopt the technology when it's available. One of the impediments to technology investments is your prior investments. It's an undepreciated capital pool. It may have soaked up all available capital during a time period. And if you end up making the wrong bet, if uh, you could be in a situation where you've got all of your capital tied up in that large undepreciated block, can't afford to take the write down. The new technology is here finally, and it is meeting somewhat near its prediction in terms of its cost effectiveness. But you've dug a hole that's very difficult for a business to get out.
Mm.
So what we're doing right now is when we advise our clients on the investments in automation, we also run a study inside their company that helps them to create what we call a humanoid readiness quotient. That in terms of the existing capital that's in place and in the planned new capital acquisition, uh, how well can it adapt to the emerging world of humanoid robotics? And there are some specific things that we've learned, the technical levels. What is the API? Is that available? Is it an open keyed API that can rapidly adopt? From a facility standpoint, do you have the access that might be required, headroom, floor flatness, some of the other technical elements of it? Do you have movable obstacles that could be a hindrance? So we look at all of those elements and we take a look at that planned investment and say, uh, yes, it will adapt, or no, it won't adapt. That's a new uh, that's a new criteria. And if anything, we look for a much more rapid payback at this point in time. Usually as a consulting firm, we're encouraging to make capital investments. We choose them, and we get aggressive on paybacks. Right now, I'm not so aggressive. I would adopt a little bit less capital intense, a little bit more flexible stance right now, because within 2 years, and maybe it'll be three, but I think within 2 years, we're going to see the arrival of industrial ready humanoid robotics at that entirely different cost level. So being in a position to rapidly
Mm.
implement them is going to be critical for a company's competitiveness going forward.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that I'm really quite curious about because of course I'm in the software industry. But we're always staying, as abreast as we can while still moving our business forward on what's happening so rapidly in AI and from a software perspective. Humanoid robots are the little bit I've seen, I'm like that this is advancing so incredibly fast. And it is getting to the point where uh you can actually commercialize it and it makes sense. I'm curious, like about you said in the next 2 to 3 years. What do you see as some of the areas where the 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 pricing and the effectiveness and the ability to train it, harness it, um, will make the most sense and could potentially have the largest impact for businesses?
Right now, if you go to Spartanburg, South Carolina, or visit the Hyundai plants I think they're in Georgia, you'll see humanoid robotics as part of the workforce, pulling a 20-hour shift. And the areas that they're being first applied to is course task. There's a three Ds that will happen first, which is the dangerous, the dirty, and the drudgery. So those repetitive
Mm,
tasks that are mind numbing, human, human spirit killers, that's going to be automated. The dangerous and the dirty jobs, and that's what we've seen right now. And picking
yeah.
up and moving totes of heavy metal parts between an inbound pallet and an assembly station, uh, taking sheet metal parts uh, from noisy oil spraying punch presses. Uh, those are the kind of things that we see them being used for, and they're being used for today. I mean, when
Mhm.
Hyundai bought, I think they own some substantial percentage. I think it's in 40% or maybe even more of Boston Dynamics. They did it for a reason.
Oh, I
They,
didn't
they
know that. That interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, and they're applying it right now. The Hyundais are being built with those robots in place, and they've got a dramatic force expansion planned for them. So they
Yeah.
are providing value add services today, and their capabilities are being fully exploited. But the capabilities we see coming rapidly at us, that by those being introduced by Figure AI and Tesla Optimus, where they have 24 degrees plus freedom hands that are incredibly stable. Um, the Optimus is particularly interesting to me because of the proximity to the technology of vision systems that Tesla has developed for their automobiles. There's a direct link to the robot and its ability to navigate the space. There's still ways to go. The highways are very structured workplace when you compare them to a factory or to a distribution center.
Mm.
And so the unstructured nature of those workplaces will take uh, more time, more refinement, if you will, more extensions to that technology before they're really comfortable in that space.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's coming at us at light speed. And those
Mhm.
companies that seize it first are going to have a really, really strong competitive advantage.
And so I'm curious really about the pricing, because we know with new technology, you kind of suffer through some of the new technology, some of the bugs, the issues,
Yeah.
getting everything, but it's also the price. It goes down dramatically, really quite quickly, and there seems to be that turning point or that tipping point where it's super early adopterish. It is really expensive, and then suddenly it starts to go, the numbers make sense. And so I know you mentioned sort of the 2 to 3 years. So what I'm sort of picturing in my mind is that's when the numbers, the dollar sign, makes the most sense for more of a mass adoption, because you are taking, you're basically putting capital out front, or you're paying for over quite a long time, rather than higher, you're paying by the hour or whatever, right? So, when does that start to make sense on, I know like Hyundai, they probably have enough capital to to make that work, but I'm wondering when it might start trickle down into some of those mid-sized businesses, and into, maybe not down to small business, but, down to that mid-sized business rather than the monoliths, right?
If you look at some of the forecasts that are being made in terms of the adoption of this kind of technology, it's going to be unprecedented in terms of its the virtuous cycle that it's in compared to any other form of automation. And it's not going to be just the small businesses. They're predicting that this is going to be in your home, doing your laundry, teaching your children's algebra. So that there will, I can't think of a parallel like it. Some of the numbers that are forecast are not hundreds of thousands or millions or tens or even hundreds of. They're talking billions of these machines being produced in a very near term future within 10 years.
Mhm.
And once you get a technology that starts to see that kind of a mass uh, production, you find two different things. One, its expansion in its capabilities is dramatic because you're going into that large market. You're going to put the R&D behind that machine, that product that you're bringing to market, and then the cost comes down rapidly as volumes goes up. So now you have
Mhm.
this cheaper and much more capable machine that is fully positioned to take full advantage of that parallel track of development, which is AI. Uh, and it's going to be, explosion in terms of what it is. What we see is useful. You get that virtuous cycle again. cost comes down, capability goes up, market expands, cost comes down further and further capable. And it's that, that virtuous cycle that's spinning, and it's spinning fast right now. So what was used
Yeah.
to be a $200,000 robot is now being easily seen to be a $50,000 robot from some of the manufacturers in the U.S. Some of the Chinese manufacturers are introducing machines that they're selling today for not much over, even less than $10,000. I've seen some of them fairly capable machines.
Mhm.
Uh, so that spinning virtuous cycle is underway. I don't think there's anything that could derail it at this point. Uh, so being positioned to rapidly in introduce that to your operations, I think is going to be critical. And that to me, that means you're doing prep work today. You're not going to bet today on those machines because those are still $200,000 machines and
Mhm.
more. That if we take a look at what Hyundai is using or what BMW are using, uh, but they're not going to stay there. But you don't want to spend that much
Yeah.
per machine. So you got to put the infrastructure in place today. Get everything ready so these things will plug into that backplane that you're producing for your manufacturing and distribution centers. And
Mhm.
and the CFO has got to provide, the questioning leadership there. Financial function is always a leadership function in organizations.
Mhm.
Uh, and this is a different uh, you know, uh, aspect to that leadership. It's just not putting the decimal points in place in a financial statement, which is the unfortunate view that a lot of people have of that function. Uh,
Mhm.
it's actually understanding what the technology is going to be uh, evolving in a direction and being able to uh, project with some degree of clarity. You don't need decimal point accuracy, but you need clarity in terms of what are the impacts on the financial performance of a company. That's that is a tremendous skill set. It's a tremendous set of knowledge, and that's what companies need from their chief financial officers.
Yeah, and I think so much like we talk with CFOs every day here, and I think one of the biggest things that they can do is also offer some insight to the CEO and to the rest of the C-suite on here's the financial side, but there's other factors, especially the CEO, that always has to consider. And I do think that there'll be some groundbreaking changes. I do think it may be a little bumpier and slower rollout than I think the technology alone and the price per unit alone will dictate because we've seen, like I said, we've been around long enough to see it can be a bit of a bumpy ride with technology on how quickly people accept it and what kind of pushback they have on the technology as well. And I know when you mention it's like the dangers and dirty first and drudgery, like yeah, okay, that's an easier justification. I do expect there'll be some pushback when it starts taking the jobs that other people want to take or want to do. Um, It'll be interesting. I want to run this by you because I just saw a quote yesterday. Unless I got misread it, I was really shocked by it. It was I believe it was one of the founders of Uber said that he expects that, and I don't even think it was 100% of the Uber cars will be robotic driven within 20 years. And I was shocked because I thought I just took a robot car a couple weeks ago. Like, how did he think? How like where is? I was sort of curious because there was no other context to it of why he thought the rollout and the transformation would take that long. I thought we are talking in 3 to 5 years, and I'm sure he said 20, and I just went, what? That would really shocked me. So there must be other elements that he's looking at on the pace of the rollout and how it will transform. I'm just curious. because it's basically the same sort of that robotic side where the estimates on it completely rolling over seems to have stretched further than I thought.
It depends on the frame that he was describing that. If you look at it in terms of the percentage of new cars being produced, it's going to be a lot quicker than 20 years. But an automobile that's being sold today, the expected life of that is 15 years or more.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a little bit of a classic, but I happen to am a proud owner of a 1999 BMW Z3, just because it's great fun.
Nice,
But
fun car. Yeah.
yeah, and but I mean that gives you an idea of the longevity of the cars. So before that capital is fully depleted and replaced, it's going to be a good long years, and they're going to be produced for several years in the future. So that may be what he's thinking about when he's talking about that. But if we take a look at, well, on a personal note, I'm very fortunate to live in Phoenix. I love the city, but I also love very much the Waymo vehicles here.
Yeah.
Every time I travel, and as a consultant, I travel a fair amount. Uh, that's my preferred way to get to and from the airport.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and my wife was looking at me and saying, "Wow, man, I don't know about that." I took her to the airport one time when we were traveling together, and it's kind of an eerie experience for the first 30 seconds into the ride. And by a minute into the ride, she forgot all about it. And it was
Mhm.
just, it is amazing how quickly we adapt to it and trust the technology.
Yeah.
When we see the rollout of the cyber vehicles in Austin, uh, and the nearness of that what that cyber cab, or whatever the name is of the for Tesla's vehicle, and the specs and the cost point that it's going to be produced at. Uh, I, yeah, I think it's going to be explosive in terms of uh, it's just consumption of the market share.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I think Uber is got to be very sophisticated in their financial evaluations to understand what the cost of that vehicle will be per mile driven versus um, that the ICE engines vehicles, and understanding what that means for what they can charge per mile driven. And I think they got a challenge. Like, a very difficult challenge. I don't know
Mhm.
that I would want to be competing from that basis in that market.
Yeah, I think it's going to have some bumps along the way. I agree with you though. Like I would much rather take a Waymo than an Uber because
Yeah.
the driver may have been driving for the last 8 hours and half the time they're on their phone. Everything else. Um, it's now I will say we did get caught this is the first time it's ever happened. It got stuck in a parking lot and we did about 5 or 6 loops of the parking lot. I thought I was going to have to call the old support and it found its way out. I was trying to coach it, and I'm still wondering if it actually was listening to me because at one point it finally figured out how to get out of the parking lot. But that was the first time I thought, yeah, okay, there's a few wrinkles here. Still a little bit of concerning. Um, but you can see it coming, and like you said, it was our experience too. You're in the car for 30 seconds, and then it's like, yeah, okay, and I think that's gonna be the same thing with humanoid robots. It'll be interesting the first time you see it, and the second time you literally the second time you see it, you'll be like, "Ah, get out of the way." It just people adapt so quickly. Um, but I do think and I think that even with AI now, we're seeing areas where it seems to be acceptable to use and areas where it's doing a really good job, and then areas where there's a ton of pushback because it's using a lot of power and a lot of water, and it's really expensive, to make silly memes and things. Like it's there's areas where there seems to be pushback and the AI slop sort of that just this terminology popped out of nowhere. Um, And so I think there'll be parallels likely with humanoid robots, where it's like, oh, totally good with all this over here, maybe a little pushback here. And if there's pushback from customers, businesses will obviously go, okay, well, we just have to be a bit more careful, I think, on rollout. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see how this actually rolls out, where the pushback is, where the early acceptance is, and how it all sort of falls into the messiness of people.
Yeah, there's going to be a learning curve from a business standpoint, from a technology standpoint, from a societal standpoint, and but like you, I've got a lot of confidence in our ability to adapt and to grow in comfort,
Mhm,
our ability to learn, uh, what the limitations are, what the advantages are, and uh, to correctly apply that. Uh, Being on the leading edge of that, which I think companies aspire to be, is going to be mean that you're going to have to do a careful evaluations of balancing the risk reward factors,
mhm,
and the risks that I see are not just a technology risk, but they're a competitiveness risk.
mhm,
If if the cost and capabilities are anywhere near as currently projected, uh, being a technology luddite in that type is going to be a death knell. Uh, at the same time, if you could go all in on the technology before it's stable, you're putting your company at risk as well.
mhm.
So there's that the delicate balance that's in there, and that's something that in my uh, honestly 50 years of doing automation, uh, it's been a changing set of factors, but that's been a critical function in choosing, making the right choices, uh, and building a plan. We with our clients, we take a look at their current state, where they have to be in terms of their capabilities that they'd have to bring to market. Then we would grow up a set of functionality in their manufacturing distribution centers that provides that capability. And then you lay out a transition plan that's a step by step plan how to evolve to get there. That's what our historical been. And now when we're striving to do that for current clients, we find that uh, it's not the traditional measures. We have to look at some more accelerated measures. We'd have to look at some more uh, aggressive goals, and it should shape how the investments that the companies are making right now. I mean, somewhere there is a proposal to put in 20 Scar robots in a maybe an assembly line along cars that's going to put in SPRs to join dissimilar metals. Okay. In a very short period of time, humanoid robots will be able to do that same task. Now they're going to have some unique capabilities that are not going to be within the reach of the current Sky robots. The combination of that uh, agility and the refined vision systems that's part of that. They're going to be able to adapt to workplace inaccuracies or tolerances, to design changes much more rapidly than that other form of automation. So if
Mhm.
you bet the house on that Scar robot, and you might find that within 3 to 5 years on that asset that you'd hope to be out there for 10 or 20, you might find in 3 to 5 years you're going to have to throw it away. You're going to
Mhm.
have to write it down somehow and replace it because you're not going to be competitive with that form of automation. And that competitiveness is going to come from, I think, two major areas. One, it's cost of operation. Ah, three, it's The other costs that they're going to be the systems, what it takes around that machine to make it functional. I mean, if you have highly accurate fixtures and very accurate machines to move parts from workplace to workplace in manufacturing, that's part of the constraints of that particular technology, and it's part of the costs of that. Where you have an adaptable humanoid type machine, then you don't have to have that same rigid fixtures or very expensive transport mechanisms between work cells. So that is part of the cost burden that you're lifting, when you go to that newer technology.
Yeah.
So putting plans in place today that allow you to quickly transition to that, I think, are going to be critical going forward.
Well, and I think the two things that I would suggest for people that are evaluating this out there is, number one is, don't ask chat. It's not going to be able to tell you, you know. But almost as bad, um, don't just go talk to the salesman and let them tell you either. Like we see experts like you in other areas of technology are absolutely critical when you're doing a really big technology purchase, to have somebody that is well versed in all of this and can actually connect all of the dots in a really complex environment and a really complex purchase like this, and actually inform you and say, no, this is not like, this is where you have opportunity. This is where you might, like I said, maybe you have to wait 2 or 3 years on this one. Maybe, um, that's absolutely critical, because all these things that you're outlining, it would be so easy for someone to read some reports, talk to a couple salespeople, and buy something that, like you said, is going to have to be replaced in 3 years. And so, um, tell me a bit about like what you do and how you work with these companies to actually make sure they're informed before they're making these types of decisions.
you know, we start in a space that's very comfortable to most CFOs. We start with data. We have to take a look at data, and like the chat function, which is based on history. We also start the analysis, taking a look at the operating history. If it's in manufacturing, or distribution, we will pick apart the numbers. We'll find out where opportunities are, uh, identify vulnerabilities during that same point, and then we start using our rather extensive repertoire of different experiences to uh, ideate, take a look at alternative futures, and then the first thing out of your head is, I think in my case is probably 80% correct, but 80%
Mm,
isn't anywhere near good enough.
mm,
So we have a process where we take that idea and we set it aside and force ourselves, say, can't do that. So ideation number two is something totally different. And sometimes we go to an ideation number three. And then we do a comparative evaluation between those different formats. And every time, it's never one or the other. It's always some hybridization. Just by going through the mental discipline to force yourself to come up with a clean slate approach after you've already invested the effort to do the first one, which
yeah.
is not easy, by the way. But you do that, you put it together, you bounce it off each other. You got different people on a team that with different viewpoints, and so you have that competition of ideas floated to the top. Okay, that's where we're going. So that in some cases that'll be 3 years in the future. Some cases it'll 2 years. It depends on a particular uh, client's operation. And so then we lay that out in the future, and then we say, how do we get from here to there in a way that doesn't bankrupt the business from not ill managed cash flows, that meets current operating needs as we make this transition, and most critically, that the workforce can adapt and evolve with the operation that we're putting in there. Change management is such a huge part of this.
Mhm.
So we will lay out that path bringing the technical side, uh, the information and control side, the people side, the business planning side, along with it, and lay that out and put in measurable guideposts to move the company from starting point to that future point. And
Mhm.
that's uh, takes different shape for every company. And that's why it's fun. Every time that every client engagement is a brand new challenge.
Mhm.
Yeah, and yeah, I got the best job in the world. I mean, I get to think about these ideas, plan them, lay them out, work with the client, understand where they're going to fit, what the capabilities are, and then you get to put it in place, and you start to see this thing come alive. We've got a, geez, I don't know, it's a $130 million new facility going in up in Oregon, where we've got one, two, three different kinds of the mobile robots in it, some fixed automation in some place, some manual adaptation that's going to get us by until another piece of automation that we see coming. Maybe it's 2 years out right now. So we don't want to put the automation in place there. We're doing that
Mhm.
as a manual, as the bridge to get to that 2 years.
Mhm.
Uh, and laying out that with the company, and it's just now coming alive. The machines are in there. It is such a fun thing to be a part of that, uh, and it's history. It's
Mhm.
operations are not dry, lifeless things. I've had my prior CFO or CEO. Actually, he was an owner, and now CEO. They went public in the interim of a large clothing company. Uh, Tell me, as we inaugurated their French distribution center, that he was shocked at how much competitive advantage he got from distribution operations. Uh,
Yeah.
so uh, uh, don't short sell the operating part of your company,
Yeah.
especially in companies like an apparel company where it's all the colors that are fashionable this year, the cuts that are whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
You got to do that right. That's critical, but you also have to do the operations right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. For sure. Well, thank you so much, David. I really appreciate this. How should people get hold of you if they want to talk with you?
well, they can reach me at David.Kilzer. That's Kilz, like zebra, at Xform. That's the engineering shorthand for transform, at xform.me, and well,
Yeah.
xform.u. So
Terrific. And I'll make sure I put that in the show notes as well. And yeah, no, this has been a terrific conversation. I found it really, really interesting, and I got to ask a bunch of questions that I'm interested in because this is, one of these areas where hopefully the people watching have the same curiosity that I do because this was fascinating, and I know it's coming so fast, especially with robotics. I really enjoyed this. And if you're a CFO out there, or you lead a finance team, and you guys are still in spreadsheets struggling with your cash flow, please come visit us at dryrun.com and we'll get you out of those spreadsheets into something that will save you a ton of time and give you your team the visibility they need to move the business forward. Thanks again, David. I really appreciate it.
thank you, Blaine.